Hey lovelies, right, so we're going to start off our build for the Krupp Protze or Protze or Protze. I don't know, is it a silent Z? Is it a hard Z? And the first thing we're going to do is the base. Now I have sanded a little bit of the join so that there's not so much of a pronounced gap between the two baseboards, because there is, no matter how you do it, there is obviously a tiny little bit of a lip. So instead of going straight down, it kind of goes down at an angle, and because it goes down at an angle, we have a slight issue. So what I've done is I've tried to just shave away little bits so that it's the two pieces sit flusher together, as it were. Just basically so that I'm then not going to have to use filler to fill this gap and hopefully strengthen it. Oh, I do apologise if this sound is going down the spines of anybody, straight down your spine. I think that's much better than what it was, because it was actually sort of like quite pronounced. It was almost like that to begin with. So that is, I think, where I'm going to take it. And so keeping these parts together. And there's a little thing I'm going to do, which some of you may agree with or won't, to just help hide that seam, that gap. And that is via, just because what the plastic weld does is it kind of melts the plastic together, and you can see it's done it at this end here. Look, I just need more glue. Hey lovelies, we're back. Right, so that's the base at this moment in time. I've just filled in the gap with some super glue. We do have a telegraph pole to throw on there in a bit. Right, destructions. So we're going to start off with the cab, and to be quite honest, at this moment in time, some of this is going to be built in sub-assemblies, and I'm not going to do, like, for example, we've got the steering column and the steering wheel needs to go in, but I need to look at that to see if it's going to interfere with putting the figure in at a later stage, because I'm going to keep the figure separate so that I can paint the figure. But the first thing I'm actually going to do is, we've got the canvas tilt, and I'm literally just going to glue that together to begin with. And that is just basically now I need to just try and blend in the join here. So I'm going to just push on it a little, and then once it's dry we'll get round to just sanding that a little bit to see if we can remove the seam, and then using just a tiny little bit of filler if necessary. So I can set that aside. We start off with the cab. Now the driver will sit in there, but because the steering column is here, I think it's going to interfere with the driver a lot. Yeah, it is. If that's the position, yeah, that's the position it goes. Wow, that's really tight. That's not it, surely. That is it. That is the position. That's really tight access into the cab. You see that? That is like really tight access. Probably because of this wheel arch here for these spare middle wheels that it has. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue in the steering column, and you need to make sure you get it out the right way because it does have a tiny little, very tiny shaped end, which will be for the steering wheel, but it will go into a groove, which I think is really good because that means that once it's in that groove, it's definitely in the right angle and position. And I think that is it. Now I have cut out a tiny little piece of perspex that I will trim up in order to glaze the windshields, and I just need to trim a tiny little bit off the top, but I will glue that into position once I've painted the miniature. I'll probably use some Gorilla Super Glue, not Gorilla Super Glue, some Gorilla Clear glue, and take that from there. Now with that in position and the steering column in, yeah, I can slide the figure in, no problem, but I think if the steering wheel was there would be a massive issue getting him in and out. So steering column and the glazing. Now the like so. And then we have these engine side pieces, the engine cover side pieces go in, and these are cut and stepped in order to match the cut and step on the piece on the cab piece here. So they will go in and they just sit there, for want of a better expression. That and like that. Then we have the radiator grill that goes on. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put the bonnet on, essentially, so that. So as I was saying, I'm just going to touch some glue into that recess as it goes along the bonnet. Then I might actually just drop some glue in around that in order to pop on the radiator grill. Now there is a gap there which I'm going to need to fill at a later stage. Or not, as the case may be. Right, and then I have this tiny little appendage here, which is going to locate into a tiny hole on that wheel arch. Like so. Right, and that's the cab essentially. We're going to start off with the interior of the flatbed and the bulkhead. So make sure you get this around the right way. And then the sides. And one thing to note, right, on these sides, there's a curve here, and that curve marries up with this bulkhead, which goes against the driver's cab. Okay, so this will be where the tailgate is. This is where the bulkhead is against the driver's cab. So the first thing I'm going to do is try and determine how these go together. Because the interesting thing is that kind of looks correct. Because the interesting thing is that it says to build this and then drop it onto this cab unit, this flatbed unit here, which yeah, kind of makes sense when you do it in that way round. So I think this is going to be one of those occasions where you're going to want to glue these bits together, these sides, and then making sure that you're working quickly before they set too much. Get it on that baseboard so that it's being positioned out into the right dimensions. I think that's it. I think. There is a distinct lack of clicking into place. Let me just, I need to bring my magnifier in. So I am surmising that this is going to... You know what? I'm going to put this tailgate on. Make sure you put this on the right way round, so that the number plate holder is on the outside. But I'm going to put that on there like that. Just hold that in position, and then right, so the easiest way to do this is going to be to glue the tailgate into position, I think. And then locate the bed. Right, so 1, 2, and then now there's some gappage here. At the back, and this is not sitting as equidistant as I thought it would, so and that's what that's looking like. Here's our canvas tilt, which I'm assuming will go on like so, or even like so. Okay, and then we have these wheel arches. And these locate lower down by the look of it. No, actually they don't. They locate higher up. They locate underneath the doors for these compartments. Not the best fit. It's actually worth swapping them around because that one fits better that side. Right, sorry about the bright light in the way, I had to bring in the lamp. So that is how that looks, and then this one this side, still a bit of an awkward fit, but it's better than the other mudguard wheel arch. I do apologise if you can hear voices from outside. Typical. Right, chassis. Don't roll off the table. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come in and put in the axle for these central hump wheels, I suppose you want to call them, which goes there. So this is the bottom of the chassis that we're looking at. I just want to make sure that that is upright, and then we flip it over. When we flip it over, we have these, we have this central axle, which is going to go here. Now I suggest putting that in first because it's going to be easier than trying to stick it in after you've stuck on these two big bad boys here. So we have these big ass axle things with wishbone suspension. I'm assuming it's a rudimentary wishbone suspension that they've modelled. And that's going to go on like that. And these are tabbed, they are keyed, so that they should only go on one way. Like that. And that's how that's going to look at this stage. Right, I've got to make a decision because I need to have a think about what I'm going to do with this front axle. I need to put suspension units on. So once you've done that, you've got suspension units that I can't find. Box. Right, so we got front leaf springs going on. Let me just get rid of this slight little bit of gunk in there. So front leaf springs, we've got 4 little tabs that they're going to sit into, which are located in the corners there. So 1, 2, and these guys go in that way up. Just make sure that they're upright when they go in. And next bit. Right, so I just need to bring the magnifier in to make sure that these are straight and level. Cool. Right, now something I'm going to do is I'm going to put in this front axle, and that goes so that the wishbone, the shallowest part is at the bottom. And I just need to bring in again the magnifier so I can see what I'm doing. So you're going to need to make sure that this sits on the crossbar on the leaf springs evenly. And that was even after I put the glue on. Right, and then the next drop just in there. I think that is level. Right, so that's that axle. Now I'm not going to glue wheels on for the simple reason being is that I want to paint them separate. What I'm going to do, looking at these instructions, is because the cab and the flatbed are obviously they go on, and that will sit on there like so, and then the bed of the cargo section will sit on there. And that's going to look a bit like that. So what I'm going to do is, now this glues together like so. And I am going to locate that onto the bed, like so, in order to ensure that it fits correctly when I come to glue it. Now the cab and the flatbed are one assembly. The chassis is another assembly, which I have the exhaust system to go on, but I've got a sneaking suspicion that the exhaust system will need to, so the exhaust system is going to, let's get some tweezers because that's going to be the easiest way to do this. Do you know what? I think it might actually be easier to glue this into position . Now I can't see the exhaust system fitting over the top of that wishbone, so I think it's going to sit underneath. Like that. And then yeah, there's two recessed holes there either side of the truck body on the underside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue that into position where it touches the chassis, and then when I come to glue it into position after painting, that is going to sit absolutely right, she said. That's cool. Right. Chassis, truck bed. Now, there is some other things that go onto the chassis, and that is we have, and I'm looking at this, just trying to decide how that works. So you got these bits here, look, which fit on there, and I'm assuming that's how they fit. Right, I've test fit one just to make sure I get it in the right place, and essentially you are gluing it across these two, but it's going to butt up against the upper part of that spar, so that it's going to be in that position. And that's basically so that when you put the truck body on, they are on the outside of the truck body, so they go there essentially. Like that. Right, the gun and its carriage. Now this is going to be interesting because what we need to do is we essentially need to glue the arms into this housing, and this is, I think, going to be quite awkward because I don't want to end up gluing the spade arms or the travelling arms or whatever you want to call them. Oh, they're a bit springy as well. So let's try this again. Like so, and then the top piece of this part of the carriage will go into well, in theory it'll go into position. Where's the tweezers? There they are. Like that. Now, tiny amount just there, and then I'm going to leave that for a second to go off. Now we have the spade and the axles, and we have the wheels, and we've got the splinter shield here as well. So building the splinter shield with the gun, that's going to go that way around, and then this is going to go there. By the look of it, that doesn't look right though. Oh yeah, maybe so. Right. So there's the gun cradle, and then that attaches to the splinter shield. One there. One there. So it looks like the gun's not really going to elevate because of the way that the cradle itself is on the splinter shield. So you could probably get away with gluing this whole assembly here. Like that. I just need to bring the magnifier in to just check and make sure that that is okay. And that looks to be correct. Now, the arms are good. And you need to make sure you get this the right way up. So there's a tab, there's a hole there, a blank space, and that is for part of the gun controls, which I'm assuming are the elevation and traverse for the gun. If such a thing has a traverse. I just want to do a little bit more glue there and there, just to ensure that that has definitely taken. Now we have these little controls, and they are going to essentially go in there. Like that. Then we have these items, which are the axle pins for the wheels. And you need to make sure that it's kind of like double barreled, but the pin that the wheel's going to go onto is at the rear. So this needs to be towards the back of the body, like there. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to actually drop a little bit of plastic weld on that rather than the assembly, and then marry it up. The reason for that is I don't want me to put a drop in there and then it runs down into the legs and stops the legs from working. And I'll do exactly the same. This side. Whoops. So I need to just orientate this. And then just make sure that they're straight across. Okay. Like that. Right, splinter shield and gun. Now this apparently just goes on there like so. Not entirely sure how that goes on. I'm assuming that we're going to locate the bottom of this bracket here. There's no pin on it. So, although there's a hole in the centre there, there's actually no pin on the bottom of this. So I'm literally just going to glue that into position. Like that. And then the wheels. And they're a little bit wobbly, so you're probably going to need to just make sure that those wheels are straight and level. Which they are. And that is your 3.7 centimetre gun. Need to put the spades in to position, which are going to go on the ends here, and they should only go one way. Like that. And basically the spades are there to stop it from travelling backwards when it's been fired. And the spades will look like that once they're on. And then that is the travel position, and that is the firing position. Yeah, do you know what? I'm going to put the wheels on. I don't think they're going to impact. It's going to impact too much on my being able to paint the chassis and the wheels. I think it'll be fine. Final little bit that needs to go into the display base is this telegraph pole, which goes in there. So let's do that, shall we? Did have to shave the telegraph pole a tiny bit to ensure that it fit into that hole. It was a bit bulbous at the base. That's pretty much all right. Okay. Now, before I do the wheels, I've got this fender that needs to go on, and it's one of the things which goes on last according to the instructions, and it's essentially what the headlamps are going to mount into. So I need to do that and then mount the headlamps in it, but I'm just going to pop that in. I'm going to bring the lamp in so that I can see what I'm doing, because it's got the magnifier on it. And that is great. Then on the truck we have some wing mirrors. I'm assuming they're wing mirrors. Now, these locate here. There's a little cutout where they go, and they're going to go in there like that. So you will need to hold these in place just as your glue goes off. So one, and then the second one goes in there like so. Come on. That's it. Right, okay, and they're both cool. Right, sorted. Now that that's gone off a little bit, we've got these headlamps. You need to make sure you get these around the right way. and the bend in them, because the stalks have bends, and the stalks bend in, so it goes down, bends that way, and bends that way in towards the center of the truck. So just make sure you get them around the right way, and also just make sure that you get the headlamp itself around the right way. So these are a headlamp, old style headlamp fixing, so they have the bulbous back. Okay, so that's that one. And where'd the other one go? There it is, it's stuck to me. And then this one. And again, just check and make sure that they're level. Cool. And then that will go on like so. Okay. Now let's put some wheels on. Make sure you get these around the right way. So there is a representation of nuts, wheel nuts on these, but it's the same wheel throughout. There's no difference in the ones that go on this raised wheel axle. Right, and that is that. The final piece that goes onto this, you just flip that upside down. We have this tiny little hook that is going to attach there, which is going to be the hook for the gun carriage. And that is that. So what we need to do is just drop our body onto the wagon. There you go. Put our canvas tilt on. And then our gun carriage. Put the spades together. And we can pop that on there. like so.